Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm a little bit late today. Uh, it just sometimes things happen. I was working on an email. I've basically been trying to read my email for hours today, just getting through obligations that I have and people that I said I'd do things for, etc., etc. Along those lines, again, I forgot that I needed a hint, so there's no hint either. So just a litany of disasters. Maybe no, wait, I found a hint. Okay, I'm gonna cover you up again and hide the hint somewhere. Where shall I put it? Where shall I put it? Okay. Are you covered? You're covered. Oh, wow. Okay. Hint has been set. Hopefully you're still there. Oh, okay. Hello, I'm back, and your hint is set somewhere. Oh my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. Just a bunch of things today. Oh, my cakes were so sad yesterday, so sad. I know we have a long first chapter today, but let's talk about what happened yesterday. So yesterday, they finally leave London and they go to Mr. and Mrs. Palmer's house, and everybody's having a good time at the Palmers. Marianne is very upset because it's close to where Willoughby lives. So she goes walking sometimes and she looks out over the cliffs towards where she thinks Willoughby's house is. And she's very upset, so she's doing her walking. She starts to feel a little bit of a cold, but is like, it's whatever, and so just keeps doing her walking out at night in the damp, which is always like, don't walk at night in the damp, everyone. You will catch your death of a cold. It will be the end for you in Austen land. So she gets this cold, and it seems at first Eleanor's like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And Mrs. Jennings is freaking out, and the Palmers leave because they're worried about their baby and it being an infection. And Colonel Brandon is there because he's still in love with Marianne. And she's like, honey. But they're like freaking out. The doctor's called, but Eleanor's like keeping her head about it, till one night Marianne wakes up, is just like not lucid, not like making any sense. She's asking for her mom, and then she's like, oh my God, we have to, this is horrifying. We've got to go. So she runs, and Colonel Brandon's like, yo, I'm going to go get your mom myself. We'll be back by 10 p.m. tomorrow. And she's like, okay, cool. So he takes off. The doctor comes, is like, oh, I don't know, guys. She seems pretty bad. And everyone's like, oh my God. And so she's really bad for a while. Eleanor is freaking out. But then it seems like it's over. And she's like, oh, thank God. Oh my God, my poor mother, who's probably freaking out on the road right now. She hears some carriages. She's like, oh, thank God it's them. Thank God I have good news to tell them. She runs downstairs, opens the door to the drawing room, and who is it but Willoughby? So we are eagerly awaiting to see what Willoughby possibly has to say for himself, because it cannot be good. All right. Ready for this? Let's do it. I can't freaking. Okay. Chapter 8 of Volume 3 of Sense and Sensibility. Eleanor, starting back with a look of horror at the sight of him, obeyed the first impulse of her heart in turning instantly to quit the room, and her hand was already on the lock, when its action was suspended by his hastily advancing and saying, in a voice rather of command than supplication, Miss Dashwood, for half an hour, for 10 minutes, I entreat you to stay. No, sir, she replied with firmness, I shall not stay. Your business cannot be with me. The servants, I suppose, forgot to tell you that Mr. Palmer was not in the house. Had they told me, he cried with vehemence, that Mr. Palmer and all his relations were at the devil, I would not have turned me from the door. My business is with you, and only with you. With me? In the utmost amazement. Well, sir, be quick, and if you can, less violent. Sit down, and I will be both. She hesitated. She knew not what to do. The possibility of Colonel Brandon's arriving and finding him there came across her. But she had promised to hear him, and her curiosity, no less than her honor, was engaged. After a moment's recollection, therefore, concluding that prudence required dispatch, and that her acquiescence would best promote it, she walked silently towards the table and sat down. He took the opposite chair, and for half a minute not a word was said by either. "Pray be quick, sir," said Eleanor impatiently. "I have no time to spare." He was sitting in an attitude of deep meditation, and seemed not to hear her. "Your sister," said he with abruptness after a moment afterwards, "is out of danger. I heard it from the servant. God be praised. But is it true? Is it really true?" Eleanor would not speak. He repeated the inquiry with yet greater eagerness. "For God's sake, tell me, is she out of danger, or is she not?" "We hope she is." He rose up and walked across the room. "Had I known as much half an hour ago. But since I am here," speaking with a forced vivacity as he returned to his seat, "what does it signify? For once, Miss Dashwood, it will be the last time, perhaps. Let us be cheerful together. A fine mood for gaiety. Tell me honestly," a deeper glow overspreading his cheeks, "do you think me most a knave or a fool?" "Well, honey, I think you're both." At him with greater astonishment than ever. She began to think that he must be in liquor. The strangeness of such a visit, and of such manners, seemed no otherwise intelligible, and with this impression she immediately rose, saying, "Mr. Willoughby, I advise you at present to return to Caen. I am not at leisure to remain with you any longer. Whatever your business may be with me, it will be better recollected and explained tomorrow." "I understand you," he replied with an expressive smile and a voice perfectly calm. "Yes, I am very drunk. Oh boy. My cold beef at Marbleau was enough to overset me, but he's lightweight. A pint of anything, that, to my knowledge, so." "At Marbleau? At Marlborough?" cried Eleanor, more and more at loss to understand what he would be at. "Yes, I left London this morning at 8 o'clock, and the only 10 minutes I have spent out of my chaise since that time procured me at luncheon at Marlborough. Marlborough. Oh my God, he had a pint at lunch and is still drunk at 10 p.m.? The steadiness of his manner and the intelligence of his eye as he spoke, convincing Eleanor that whatever other unpardonable folly might bring him to Cleveland, he was not brought there by intoxication, she said, after a moment's recollection. "Mr. Willoughby, you ought to feel, and I certainly do, that after what has passed, your coming here in this manner and forcing yourself upon my notice requires a very particular excuse. What is it that you mean by it?" "I mean," said he with serious energy, "if I can, to make you hate me 1 degree less than you do now. I mean to offer some kind of explanation, some kind of apology for the past, to open my whole heart to you, and by convincing you that though I have been always a blockhead, I have not always been a rascal, to obtain something like forgiveness from your sister." "Is this the real reason of your coming?" "Upon my soul it is," was his answer, with a warmth which brought all the former Willoughby to her remembrance, and in spite of herself made her think him sincere. "If that is all, you may be satisfied already. For Marianne does. She has long forgiven you." "Has she?" he cried in the same eager tone. "Then she has forgiven me before. She ought to have done it. But she shall forgive me again on more reasonable grounds. Now will you listen to me?" Eleanor bowed her assent. "I do not know," said he after a pause of expectation on her side and thoughtfulness on his own, "how you may have accounted for my behaviour to your sister, or what diabolical motive you may have imputed me. Perhaps you will hardly think it the better of me. It was worth the trial, however, and you shall hear everything. When I first became intimate in your family, I had no other intention, no other view in the acquaintance than to pass my time pleasantly while I was obliged to remain in Devonshire, more pleasantly than I had ever done before. Your sister's lovely person and interesting manners could not but please me, and her behaviour to me, almost from the first, was of a kind. It is astonishing, when I reflect on what it was and what she was, that my heart should have been so insensible. But at first I must confess I was thinking only of my own amusement, giving way to feelings which I had always been too much in the habit of indulging. I endeavoured by every means in my power to make myself pleasing to her, without any design of returning her affection." Miss Dashwood, at this point, turning her eyes on him with the most angry contempt, stopped him by saying, "It is hardly worth while, Mr. Willoughby, for you to relate, or for me to listen any longer. Such a beginning as this cannot be followed by anything. Do not let me be pained by hearing anything more on the subject." I insist on your hearing the whole of it, he replied. My fortune was never large, and I had always been expensive, always in the habit of associating with people of better income than myself. Every year since my coming of age, and even before, I believe, I had added to my debts, and though the death of my old cousin, Mrs. Smith, was to set me free, yet that event being uncertain and possibly far distant, it had been for some time my intention to re-establish my circumstances by marrying a woman of fortune. Okay, this is Willoughby. Willoughby is explaining himself. And Eleanor's like, dude, I don't care. I don't care. So anyways, the first thing he said was like, so anyways, your sister was just like so into me that I was just like, what the hell? I can't ever return her like her actions, but I'm just gonna make it happen. Yeah, he's a gold digger. Anyways. Where was I? To attach myself to your sister, therefore, was not a thing to be thought of, and with a meanness, selfishness, cruelty, with no indignant, no contemptuous look, even of yours, Miss Dashwood, can ever reprobate too much. I was acting in this manner, trying to engage her regard, without a thought of returning it. But one thing may be said for me, even that horrid state of selfish vanity. I did not know the extent of the injury I meditated, because I did not then know what it was to love. Oh, buddy! But have I ever known it? Well, it may be doubted, for had I really loved, could I have sacrificed my feelings to vanity, to avarice? Or, what is more, could I have sacrificed hers? But I have done it. To avoid a comparative poverty, which her affection and her society would have deprived of all its horrors, I have, by raising myself to affluence, lost everything that could make it a blessing. You did then, said Eleanor, a little softened, believe yourself at one time attached to her. To have resisted such attractions, to have withstood such tenderness, is there a man on earth who could have done it? Yes, I found myself by insensible degrees sincerely fond of her, and the happiest hours of my life were what I spent with her when I felt my intentions were strictly honourable, and my feelings blameless. Even then, however, when fully determined on paying my address to her, I allowed myself most improperly to put off from day to day the moment of doing it, from an unwillingness to enter into an engagement while my circumstances were so greatly embarrassed. I'm going to sneeze. Oh boy, excuse me. I have to agree, Patricia. I will not reason here, nor will I stop you to expatiate on the absurdity and the worse than absurdity of scrupling to engage my faith where my honour was already bound. The event has proved that I was a cunning fool, providing with great circumspection for possible opportunity of making myself contemptible and wretched forever. At last, however, my resolution was taken, and I had determined, as soon as I could engage her alone, to justify the attentions I had so invariably paid her, and openly assure her of an affection which I had already taken such pains to display. But in the interim of the very few hours that were to pass before I could have an opportunity of speaking with her in private, a circumstance occurred, an unlikely circumstance, to ruin all my resolution, and with it all my comfort. A discovery took place. Here he hesitated and looked down. Mrs. Smith had somehow or other been informed, I imagine by some distant relation whose interest it was not to deprive me of her favour, of an affair, a connection. But I need not explain myself farther, he added, looking at her with a heightened colour and inquiring eye. Your particular intimacy. You have probably heard the whole story long ago. I have, returned Eleanor, colouring likewise, and hardening her heart anew against any compassion for him. I have heard it all, and I know you will explain away any part of your guilt in that dreadful business. I confess is beyond my comprehension. Remember, cried Willoughby, from whom you received the account. Well, buddy, how are you going to sweeten the idea that you left a woman pregnant by you to starve and die? How do you excuse that? Could it be an impartial one? I acknowledge that her situation and her character ought to have been respected by me. I do not mean to justify myself, but at the same time cannot leave you to suppose that I have nothing to urge. that because she was injured, she was irreproachable, and because I was a libertine, she the weakness of her understanding. I do not mean, however, to defend her affection for me deserved better treatment, and I often, with great self-reproach, recall the tenderness which, for a very short time, had the power of creating any return. I heartily wish it had never been. But I have injured more than herself, and I have injured one whose affection for me, may I say it, was scarcely less warm than hers, and whose mind, oh, how infinitely superior. Okay. Your indifference, however, towards that unfortunate girl, I say it, unpleasant to me as the discussion of such a subject may well be, your indifference is no apology for your cruel neglect of her. Do not think yourself excused by any weakness, any natural defect of understanding on her side, in the wanton cruelty so on yours. You must have known that while you were enjoying yourself in Devonshire, always gay, always happy, she was reduced to the extremest indigence. I wish I had blasted that word, but I didn't know it. But anyways, yes, Eleanor. But upon my soul, I did not know it, he warmly replied. I did not recollect that I had omitted to give her my direction. Ah! And common sense might have told her how to find it out. Well, sir, and what said Mrs. Smith? She taxed me with the offence at once, and all my confusion may be guessed. The purity of her life, the formality of her notions, her ignorance of the world, everything was against me. The matter itself I could not deny, and vain was every endeavour to soften it. She was previously disposed, I believe, to doubt the morality of my conduct in general, and was moreover discontented with the very little attention and very little portion of my time that I had bestowed on her in my present visit. In short, it ended in a total breach. By one measure I might have saved myself. In the height of morality, good woman, she offered to forgive the past if I would marry Eliza. That could not be. And I was bitch. And I was formally dismissed from her favour and her house. The night following this affair, I was to go the next morning, and was spent by me in deliberating on what my future conduct should be. The struggle was great, but it ended too soon. My affection for Marianne, my thorough conviction of her attachment to me, it was all insufficient to outweigh that dread of poverty, or get the better of those false ideas of the necessity of riches which I was naturally inclined to feel. And the expense of society had increased. I had reason to believe myself secure of my present wife if I chose to address her, and I persuaded myself to think that nothing else in common prudence— I gotta sneeze again. I lose my spot. Damn. I really lost it. Conduct should be, I think it was here. The struggle was great, but it ended too soon. My affection for Marianne, my thorough conviction of her attachment to me, it was all insufficient to outweigh that dread of poverty, or get the better of those false ideas of the necessity of riches which I was naturally inclined to feel, and expensive society had increased. I had reason to believe myself secure of my present wife if I chose to address her, and I persuaded myself to think that nothing else in common prudence remained for me to do. A heavy scene, however, awaited me before I could leave Devonshire. I was engaged to dine with you on that very day. Some apology was therefore necessary for my breaking the engagement. But whether I should write this apology or deliver it in person was a point of long debate. To see Marianne, I felt, would be dreadful, and I even doubted whether I could see her again to keep my resolution. In that point, however, I undervalued my own magnanimity, as the event declared, for I saw her miserable, and left her miserable, and left her hoping never to see her again. Okay, I'm so sorry. I have to go blow my nose. I will be right back. Desperately sorry. Entertain yourselves on the chat. I will return in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. I cannot do this nose thing. Off I go. Okay, so sorry. I don't know. It was really happening. I'm back. Whew. Oh my God, 3.5 hours? That's awful. What are you doing here? Except, like, please stay. Okay. Whew. Okay. The clue is me blowing my nose. That was your clue. I'm just joking. It was not me blowing my nose. Oh, okay. Wow, what a day. What a time to be alive. What a time to have a nose. All right, let's try this again. Ugh, do we believe Willoughby? Barely. Okay. Why did you call, Mr. Willoughby? Said Eleanor reproachfully. A note would have answered every purpose. Why was it necessary to call? It was necessary to my own pride. I could not bear to leave the country in a manner that might lead you, or the rest of the neighbourhood, to suspect any part of what had really passed between Mrs. Smith and myself. And I resolved, therefore, on calling at the cottage in my way to Honiton. The sight of your dear sister, however, was really dreadful, and to heighten the matter, I found her alone. You were all gone, I do not know where. I had left her only that evening before, so firmly resolved within myself on doing right. A few hours were to have her engaged to me for ever, and I remember how happy, how gay were my spirits as I walked from the cottage to Allenham, satisfied with myself, delighted with everybody. But in this, our last interview of friendship, I approached her with a sense of guilt that almost took from me the power of dissembling. Her sorrow, her disappointment, her deep regret, when I told her that I was obliged to leave Devonshire so immediately. I shall never forget it. United to with such reliance, such confidence in me. Oh God, what a hard-hearted rascal I was! They were both silent for a few moments. Eleanor first spoke. Did you tell her that you should soon return? I do not know what I told her, he replied impatiently. Less than was due to the past, beyond a doubt, and on all likelihood much more than was justified by the future. I cannot think of it. It won't do. Then came your dear mother to torture me farther with all her kindness and confidence. Thank heaven. It did torture me. Miss Dashwood, you cannot have an idea of the comfort it gives me to look back on my own misery. I owe such a grudge to myself for the stupid, rascally folly of my own, and all my past sufferings under it are only triumph and exultation to me now. Well, I left all that I loved, and went to those to whom at indifferent. My journey to town, travelling with my own horses, and therefore so tediously. No creature to speak to. My own reflections so cheerful. When I looked forward, everything so inviting. When I looked back at Barton, the picture so soothing. Oh, it was a blessed journey. He stopped. Well, sir, said Eleanor, who, though pitying him, grew impatient for his departure. And this is all? All? No. Have you forgot what passed in town? That infamous letter. Did she show it to you? Yes, I saw every note that passed. When the first of hers reached me, as it immediately did, for I was in town the whole time, what I felt is, in the common phrase, not to be expressed in a more simple one, perhaps too simple to raise any emotion. My feelings were very, very painful. Every line, every word was, in the hackneyed metaphor which their dear writer, were she here, would forbid, a dagger to my heart. To know that Marianne was in town was, in the same language, a thunderbolt. Thunderbolts and daggers, what a reproof would she have given me! Her taste, her opinions, I believe they are better known to me than my own, and I am sure they are dearer. Eleanor's heart, which had undergone many changes in the course of this extraordinary conversation, was now softened again. Yet she felt it her duty to check such ideas in her companion as the last. This is not right, Mr. Willoughby. Remember that you are married. Relate only what in your conscience you think necessary for me to hear. Damn, Eleanor! Marianne's note, by assuring me that I was still as dear to her as in former days, that in spite of the many, many weeks we had been separated, she was as constant in her own feelings and as full of faith in the constancy of mine as ever, awakened all my remorse. I say awakened because time and London, business and dissipation, had in some measure quieted it, and I had been growing a fine-hardened villain, fancying myself indifferent to her, and choosing to fancy that she too must have become indifferent to me. talking to myself about past attachment as a mere idle, trifling business, shrugging up my shoulders in proof of its being so, and silencing every reproach, overcoming every scruple, by secretly saying now and then, I shall be heartily glad to hear she is well married. But this note made me know myself better. I felt that she was infinitely dearer to me than any other woman in the world, and that I was using her infamously. But everything was then just settled between Miss Grey and me. To retreat was impossible. All that I had to do was to avoid you both. I sent no answer to Marianne, intending by that means to preserve myself from her farther notice, and for some time I was even determined not to call in Berkeley Street. But at last, judging it wiser to affect the air of cool, common acquaintance than anything else, I watched you all safely out of the house one morning and left my name. Watched us out of the house? I agree, Ship. I've heard enough. I don't care. So much left of Willoughby. Even so, you would be surprised to hear how often I watched you, how often I was on the point of falling in with you. I have entered many a shop to avoid your sight as the carriage drove by. Lodging as I did in Bond Street, there was hardly a day in which I did not catch a glimpse of one or the other of you, and nothing but the most constant watchfulness on my side, a most invariable prevailing desire to keep out of your sight, could have separated us long. I avoided the Middletons as much as possible, as well as everybody else who was likely to prove an acquaintance in common. Not aware of their being in town, however, I blundered on Sir John, I believe, the first day of his coming, and the day after I called at Mrs. Jennings. He asked me to a party, a dance at his house in the evening. Had he not told me as an inducement that you and your sister were to be there, I should have felt it too certain a thing to trust myself near him. The next morning, my nose is just not good today. The next morning brought another short note from Marianne. It really helps his voice though, because it rests back here, and the blockage is just perfect for Willoughby. Still affectionate, open, artless, confiding, everything that could make my conduct most hateful. I could not answer it. I tried, but could not frame a sentence. But I thought of her, I believe, every moment of the day. If you can pity me, Miss Dashwood, pity my situation as it was then. With my head and heart full of your sister, I was forced to play the happy lover to another woman. Those 3 or 4 weeks were worse than all. Well, at last I need not tell you, you were forced on me. And what a sweet figure I cut. What an evening of agony it was. Marianne, beautiful as an angel on one side, calling me Willoughby in such a tone. Oh, God! Holding out her hand to me, asking me for an explanation of those bewitching eyes fixed in such speaking solicitude on my face. And Sophia, jealous as the devil, on the other hand, looking all that was. Well, it does not signify. It is over now. Such an evening. I ran away from you all as soon as I could, but not before I had seen Marianne's sweet face as white as death. That was the last look I ever had of her. The last manner in which she appeared to me. It was a horrid sight. Yet when I thought of her today, as really dying, it was a kind of comfort to me to imagine that I knew exactly how she would appear to those who saw her last in this world. She was before me, constantly before me, as I travelled, in the same look and hue. Did he just say he was okay with her dying? A short pause of mutual thoughtfulness succeeded. Willoughby, first rousing himself, broke it thus. Well, let me make haste and be gone. My nose. Your sister is certainly better, certainly out of danger. We are assured of it. Your poor mother, too, doting on Marianne. But the letter, Mr. Willoughby, your own letter, have you anything to say about that? Oh, yes, that in particular. Your sister wrote to me again, the very next morning. You saw what she said. I was breakfasting at the Ellisons, and her letter with some others was brought to me there from my lodgings. It happened to catch Sophia's eye before it caught mine, and its size, the elegance of the paper, the handwriting altogether, immediately gave her suspicion. Some vague report had reached her before of my attachment to some young lady in Devonshire, and what had passed within her observation of the preceding evening had marked who the young lady was, and made her more jealous than ever. Affecting that air of playfulness, therefore, which is delightful in a woman one loves, she opened the letter directly and read its contents. She was well paid for her impudence. She read what made her wretched. Her wretchedness I could have borne, but her passion, her malice, at all events, it must be appeased. And in short, what do you think of my wife's style of letter writing? Delicate, tender, truly feminine, was it not? Your wife! The letter was in your own handwriting. Yes, but I had only the credit of servilely copying such sentences as I was ashamed to put my name to. The original was all her own happy thoughts and gentle diction. But what could I do? We were engaged, everything in preparation, the day almost fixed. But I am talking like a fool. Preparation, day. In honest words, her money was necessary to me, and in a situation like mine, anything was to be done to prevent a rupture. And after all, what did it signify to my character in the opinion of Marianne and her friends, and in what language my answer was couched? It must have been only to one end. My business was to declare myself a scoundrel, and whether I did it with a bow or a bluster was of little importance. I am ruined forever in their opinion, said I to myself. I am shut out forever from their society. They already think me an unprincipled fellow. This letter will only make them think me a blackguard one. Such were my reasonings, as in a sort of desperate carelessness, I copied my wife's words and parted with the last relics of Marianne, her 3 notes. Unluckily, they were all in my pocket-book, or I should have denied their existence, and hoarded them forever. I was forced to put them up, and could not even kiss them. Oh, Buddy. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh. And the lock of hair, too, that I had always carried about me in the same pocket-book, which was now searched by Madame with the most ingratiating virulence. The dear lock. Every memento was torn from me. You are very wrong, Mr. Willoughby, very blamable, said Eleanor, while her voice, in spite of herself, betrayed her compassion and emotion. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm going to have too much fun. You ought not to speak in this way, either of Mrs. Willoughby or my sister. You have made your own choice. It was not forced on you. Your wife has claim to your politeness, to your respect, at least. She must be attached to you, or she would not have married you. To treat her with unkindness, to speak of her slightingly, is no atonement to Marianne, nor can I suppose it a relief to your own conscience. Bam! Do not talk to me of my wife, said he with a heavy sigh. She does not deserve your compassion. You know who doesn't deserve your compassion? She knew I had no regard for her when we married. Well, married we were, and came down to Carmagnet to be happy, and afterwards returned to town to be gay. And now do you pity me, Miss Dashwood? Or have I said all this to no purpose? Am I, be it only 1 degree, am I less guilty in your opinion than I was before? My intentions were not always wrong. Have I explained away any part of my guilt? Yes, you have certainly removed something, a little. You have proved yourself, on the whole, less faulty than I believed you. You have proved your heart less wicked, much less wicked. But I hardly know. The misery that you have inflicted, I hardly know what could have made it worse. Will you repeat to your sister when she has recovered what I have been telling you? No! Let me be a little lightened too in her opinion as well as in yours. No! You tell me that she has forgiven me already. Let me be able to fancy that a better knowledge of my heart and of my present feelings will draw from her a more spontaneous, more natural, more gentle, less dignified forgiveness. Tell her of my misery and my penitence. Tell her that my heart was never inconstant to her, and, if you will, that at this moment she is dearer to me than ever. Absolutely not! That was me beating him senseless with this book. Oh, Eleanor, why are you nice? I will tell her all that is necessary to what may be comparatively be called your justification. But you have not explained to me the particular reason of your coming now, nor how you heard of her illness. Last night in Drury Lane lobby, I ran against Sir John Middleton, and when he saw who I was, for the first time these 2 months, he spoke to me. That he had cut me ever since my marriage, I had seen without surprise or resentment. Now, however, his good-natured, honest, stupid soul, Jesus, full of indignation against me and concern for your sister, could not resist the temptation of telling me what he knew ought to, though probably he did not think it would, vex me horridly. As bluntly as he could speak it, therefore, he told me that Marianne Dashwood was dying of a putrid fever at Cleveland. A letter that morning received from Mrs. Jennings declared her danger most imminent. The Palmers all gone off in a fright, and I was so much shocked to be able to pass myself off as insensible even to the undiscerning Sir John. His heart was softened in seeing mine suffer, and so much of his ill will was done away that when we parted he almost shook me by the hand, while he reminded me of an old promise about a pointed puppy. What I have felt on hearing that your sister was dying, and dying too, believe me, the greatest villain upon the earth, scorning, hating me in her latest moments. For how could I tell what horrid projects might not have been imputed? One person I was sure would represent me as capable of anything. What I felt was dreadful. My resolution was soon made, and at 8 o'clock this morning I was in my carriage. Now you know all. I really hope that Colonel Brandon comes back and just decks this guy, just like takes him out. Eleanor made no answer. Her thoughts were silently fixed on the irreparable injury to which too early an independence and its consequent habits of idleness, dissipation, and luxury had made in the mind, the character, the happiness of a man who, to every advantage of person and talents, united a disposition naturally open and honest, and a feeling, affectionate temper. The world had made him extravagant and vain. Extravagance and vanity had made him cold-hearted and selfish. Vanity, while seeking its own guilty triumph at the expense of another, had involved him in a real attachment which extravagance, or at least its offspring, necessity, had required to be sacrificed. Each faulty propensity in leading him to evil had led him likewise to punishment. The attachment from which, against honor, against feeling, against every better interest, he had outwardly torn himself, now, when no longer allowable, governed every thought, and the connection, for the sake of which he had, with little scruple, left her sister to misery, was likely to prove a source of unhappiness to himself of a far more incurable nature. From a reverie of this kind she was recalled at the end of some minutes by Willoughby, who, rousing himself from a reverie at least equally painful, started up in preparation for going, and said, "There is no use in staying here. I must be off." "Are you going back to town?" "No, to Combe. I have business there, from thence to town in a day or two. Good-bye." He held out his hand. She could not refuse to give him hers. He pressed it with affection. "And you do think something better of me than you did?" said he, letting it fall, and leaning against the mantelpiece as if forgetting he was to go. Duel, 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 duel. Ooh, Patricia! Eleanor assured him that she did. That she forgave, pitied, wished him well, was even interested in his happiness, fuck that, and added some gentle counsel as to the behavior most likely to promote it. His answer was not very encouraging. "As to that," said he, "I must rub through the world as well I can. Domestic happiness is out of the question. If, however, I am allowed to think that you and yours feel an interest in my fate and actions, it may be the means. It may put me on my guard. At least, it will be something to live for. Marianne, to be sure, is lost to me forever. Were I even by any blessed chance at liberty again—" Eleanor stopped him with reproof. She's like, "Excuse me, you do not think about my sister. Do not come anywhere near my sister." "Well," he replied, "once more goodbye. I shall now go away and live in dread of one event." "What do you mean?" "Your sister's marriage." "Oh my God! You absolute fucking ass! You absolute piece of trash bag!" "You are very wrong. She can never be more lost to you than she is now. But she will be gained by someone else. And if that someone should be the very he whom, of all others, I could least bear. But I will not rob myself of all your compassionate goodwill by showing that where I have most injured I can least forgive. Goodbye. God bless you." And with these words, he almost ran out of the room. Wow, that was supposed to, like, make us feel better about him, but at least, like, I could pretend that he was I don't know. We do not like him. We are done with him. I was trying to make it a little more compassionate, the voice a little bit in there, but no, he does not deserve any compassion. You did that all to yourself, honey. Nobody feels bad for you, except maybe Eleanor, but she really shouldn't. Oh my god. Okay. Okay, I think okay, I'm gonna leave it for tomorrow. 'Cause whew, that was a chapter, and my poor little schnoz is all schnozzed up. Wow. Oh, those are my glasses. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry. Alright, I will get your hint. I'm trying to scroll through things. Your hint is back here today. This mug. This little mug of mine. Here she is. Here's my little mug. And that's your hint for today. That's all I can say. Ooh, Patricia found the hint. She found it. Look at her go. Okay. I will see. Yeah, it's got animals. I painted it. I made a little mug. Yes, little animals. Okay. Okie dokios. I'm so excited. I'm excited to see I mean, I don't know how many chapters because we have to keep splitting the chapters. So if we just did 8 today, we'll do 9 and 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh my god, we only have 3 days left? Wild. Okay. I feel like you guys are gonna get angry at me when I tell you what it is. I don't know if I'm giving good enough hints. Okay. Tomorrow is Monday, so I will begin at how do we only have 3 days left? Nobody likes the person that they're supposed to like right now. Okay. Alright. We'll have to see how this unfolds. Stay tuned. I'll see you tomorrow at 3. Okie dokios. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I wish you fun times and excitement, and I wish that you don't take 4 hours to read your email because that's a bummer. Okay, I'm leaving now. Goodbye. Goodbye.